Good morning, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. It is Thursday, February 8th, and happy birthday to my grandson Leighton. He's 8 years old on the 8th. That's pretty cool, and he's going to be coming down here on about the 15th of the month to celebrate his birthday. That was one of his birthday wishes, was to be able to come back to the farm. So I think on the 15th he's coming down here. And what I'm going to ask you guys is maybe you could help me think of something we could do special for his birthday when he gets down here. The only thing I can think of is maybe the same old stuff, is doing a woodworking project together. And what I was thinking of was making him a trophy shelf for his room, because he's eat up with sports. And there's eventually going to be a lot of trophies. The whole team knows, just give the ball to Leighton and it'll go to the other end of the court. That's pretty much the way it works. And Leighton is a scoring machine. In his basketball, he's just making basket after basket. He makes a lot per game. It's amazing for 8 years old. And same way in his football, same way in his soccer. He's just eat up with sports. And of course, his dad loves that because his dad was a sports nut, and his dad was in the papers quite a bit because he was a quarterback and very, very good at football and things like that. So it's a sports family. It's hard for me to relate to the sports part of it too much, but on the other hand, I'm hoping I can come up with something that'll make an 8-year-old boy pretty happy when he gets here. And I thought maybe a trophy shelf would be good or something. I don't know. If you can think of something better or more fun, let me know. I thought I'd start off with another chirp here. One of the things I'm going to show you is a few of the finds that I've found here on the farm. And as most of you know that have been here a long time, that I do like to metal detect. And what's really cool is I have always wanted to tie the farm into the Civil War, because I just assumed there would be some connection here at this type of farm with all the water, so close to the railroad tracks, all of that. It just seemed to make sense. And turns out, I found quite a few Civil War bullets, buttons, a cavalry spur, a piece of a cavalry spur. So, I've definitely tied it into Civil War artifacts. There's been several Civil War experts, or so-called experts, look at the stuff, and they go, absolutely, it's Civil War. So, anyway, I've been able to do that. I found a few little trinket toys, just little like handmade marbles and a little wheel and little things that you could tell were child's toys. And I found a lady's wedding ring down deep in the spring, about 18 inches down deep in the spring. So with all that being said, I wrote this song. Most of you have already heard me do it, but I know there's new people. It's called The Wedding Band. Sarah married John in 64, and in that same year he marched off to war, leaving Sarah in the valley all alone. But that would change soon after he had gone. She washed the baby's clothes in the nearby spring, and it was there she lost her precious wedding ring. Feeling more alone, she longed for his return. The nights were long as her heart would yearn. And then 160 years passed into view, when her precious wedding band was found anew, just as if her soul were there for all to see. Sarah, John, and their baby. Having a brain jam. The war raged on as Sarah made her way. The baby grew more like John every day. She prayed that one day soon the war would end, she'd see John coming round the bend. And despite the odds, John made his way home. And though weak and sick, Sarah would hang on, till the baby's daddy held him to his breast, allowing Sarah to find eternal rest. And then 160 years pass into view, when her precious wedding band was found anew, just as if her soul were there for all to see. Sarah, John, and their baby. Sarah, John, and their baby. Historically speaking, I don't know how the farm was tied into the Civil War, but obviously there was some connection. I don't know if it was just troops camped out here, because of all the water in the valley. There's lots of springs. I have no idea if that's what it was, or just maybe some locals that were banded together as part of the Civil War. I just have no idea what it was. It appears to be Union-related artifacts. They don't appear to be Confederate, at least not that I've seen anyway, and not that I can tell. So I don't really know the whole story behind it, but it's an interesting thing. And again, for the new people, I found 2 old home places back in the valley of the farm that no one knew were there. Well, actually, there was a hint, and the people we bought it from said that they thought there was an old home place about halfway back. And the reason that it's obvious that there was is there's some rocks that are laid up in one spot in the woods there. And that's the only sign you can see, because bulldozers came through in the 40s and bulldozed down everything and made terraces and everything. So that really made a mess of finding the artifacts, unfortunately. But regardless, I on an old map, I found 2 little dots where old houses had been at one time. And sure enough, I took my metal detector back there and started finding stuff just like crazy. And I have found some old coins and just all kinds of really cool old artifacts dating back to the 1860s. I don't think I've really, well, according to the archaeologists from the fort that came here to look and see what I found, they said one of the bottles that I found was from the early 1800s, 1820s, something like that. But other than that, they said everything looked like it was about the Civil War period and later. So anyway, that's the name of that information there. And moving on to the finds that I found yesterday. What I didn't tell you guys yesterday was I had invited Cash to come back and kind of practice a little bit and try to tighten him up a little bit on his timing. And so between the time I got finished with my paperwork in there and I forgot what else I did. I did something else and went to lunch. And anyway, I had a little bit of time to kill before he got here. So I went out and looked around just for some more artifacts. Didn't find anything to write home about, but some stuff, So here's a few things I found. Again, another leaf spring. I find these things like crazy. It had the hole right here. This was bent. These leaf springs were used in buggy seats, sometimes on the wagons themselves, on the axles. I don't know, but it's old, and it was, down fairly deep in the ground. But definitely, it's another leaf spring. Found this. Now, it's just a horseshoe. It's nothing to write home about, again, but look how thin that thing is wore. It's just almost a wire right there. It's really thin. That's about a little more than a 1/4 inch thick still. And I'm sure it was every bit of that thick, at least at one time, and probably even thicker than that, actually. This thing's really wore. I don't think I've seen one more wore that's still together. I found them broken in pieces, of course. Trying to go from stuff to a little bit better, and this is just a nondescript bullet, lead bullet. This is not Civil War. This is fairly modern. Then another very modern bullet, and this one's completely intact. I think you could load this one and shoot it still. I think it would shoot. This is a 7 point something. I forget what it, 7.2 or something like that now. I don't know. It's an odd caliber, 7.6 I think. I think that's what it is, 7.6. But anyway, then God rest little Betsy, or Bessie, I should say. Number 47, may she rest in peace. I'm sure she's gone to this world. But anyway, that's a cow tag. These were hung around their necks. Makes about probably around 6 or so of these I've found on the farm here. These ring up so good. Every time I see one of these, the metal detector rings up, like mine, the numbers, the range are from, below 0 up to about 40 approximately. Well, these hit like a 32. So the higher the number, the better the find, generally speaking, especially like in coins and things like that. So when this thing hits a solid 32 and you think, all right, I found something cool. And yet in the back of your mind, because I found so many of these, I'm going, I hope it's not a cow tag. Well, sure enough, it was. But anyway, and then here's the best thing I found. And ladies and gentlemen, I have struck gold again. I found more gold. Well, at least it's gold color. Look at that. Isn't that something? And it wasn't together. It was actually open. And the latch still works. Now, I don't think this is real old. I'm going to say this is 50 years old, 40, 50 years old, something like that. I don't think it's any older than that, and it's just costume jewelry, I'm sure. But anyway, I thought it was kind of unique to find something like that out in the middle of a cow pasture. Actually, I found that in the barn lot where they actually had the cattle in a very small lot, feed lot like, So that I'm sure it was trampled by a dozen cows, and it was down 6 inches deep, something like that. Okay, well, that's all of that stuff, so we can move on to the good stuff. I told you Cash came, and we tried to tighten him up on his timing and stuff, and unfortunately, he's still got some timing issues. I don't recall a student that forms habits quicker than Cash. His habits are hard to break, and he forms them easily. And it's like I've told you before on horses, and you believe what you want, but I've been around horses my whole life. My dad, is in the Hall of Fame for the Missouri Foxtrotter Horse Breed Association, so I've been, horses have been pushed down my throat my whole life. So I know about this, and what I say about horses is just about the same thing as I say about Cash. They'll learn a bad habit one time. Just one time they learn a bad habit. Like if you don't correct them for trying to bite you, or if you don't correct them for rearing up, or if you don't correct them for kicking at you, that type of thing, then the next time you can pretty much bet they're going to do it again. That's the way a horse is. Now, to teach them something really good, it takes repetition after repetition after repetition after repetition, and I mean you can't even say it enough. You got to show them 100 times, and once they get it, they've got it. But it takes a while. And Cash is a whole lot like that. He can form a bad habit so quick on his timing and stuff. And like, and I can call his attention to it, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like I'll say, like he was having timing on the words coming in. Like I said, well, just leave out the word well. Just come in with, I see the train coming. Well, I see the train coming. No, and he has to put that word in there every time. He cannot leave it out because it's just a habit, And that's just one example. But his timing habits are the same also. And if he has a break time in a particular spot, he's pretty much going to break time there every single time. Anyway, so while this is pretty good performance, I don't mean to degrade it. He does still have a few of those little timing issues that I'm trying to tickle out of him, and it just takes a lot of repetition with Cash. He's very good musician, very good singer, and going to be super good. But it's like training a horse. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Cash. I hear that train a-comin', It's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck full from prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps rolling on down to San Antonio. I bet there's just smoking in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. I know I have it coming, I know I can't be free. Those people keep moving, and that's what tortures me. If they free me from this prison and that railroad train was mine, I'd bet I'd move it on a little farther down the line, far from Folsom Prison. That's where I'd like to stay, and I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away.
Hey, Cash is playing his Jesse Burge guitar there. Thank you again, Jesse, for kindly sending that to Cash. Very nice guitar, and Cash is doing very good. If you just look at it on the surface, that's excellent. For those of you who think I'm being too hard on him or too harsh, he understands why I say what I say. And see, it's like in archery. It's like in anything that you're trying to fine tune. The finer you tune it, the smaller your mistakes are. And the finer the harder you push to get, see, practice don't make perfect. It don't. People think that, but that's not what makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And you have to practice over and over to get rid of the little mistakes, the little bubbles, the little bobbles. And if you do that, you'll still make them. In all the years I've been playing music, I would say if I've done it once, it would be a miracle. But I would say I've probably never played one song all the way through without making some kind of bobble, some kind of little tiny mistake that didn't need to be there. Now, they may have been so small that the average person wouldn't even notice it. But it's still, but that's how you get better, is you try to, eliminate all the little tiny mistakes. So that's what I'm doing. He's getting ready for a contest, see? And his contest, I think, is on the 9th, so it's tomorrow, I think. And I was trying to tighten up every little detail and get it perfect, so that way when he does get on stage, if he makes a mistake, it'll hopefully be a small mistake. And most of the things he did there were small, but there are quite a few little timing breaks in that. There's probably a half dozen, and I'm just trying to get rid of them. Will the judges notice that? Maybe a little bit, maybe not. I don't know. You don't know what the qualifications of the judges are, so they may not even notice what little timing mistakes were there. But anyway, he knows why I say what I say, and it's not like I'm trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be helpful and trying to get a way to be perfect practice. He's doing really good. He's 10 years old, in case you're wondering. Anyway, moving on to the main topic of today, Dremel accessories. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff here. Well, I don't even really know where to start. There's so much. This was on this upright stuff here. This was the base. This is the base that comes from Dremel, I guess you'd say. This is the actual normal Dremel router base. I didn't like this too much for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't like this big V. Now, I know the reason for it. I know most people would say, well, you got to have that so you can see what you're doing. Yeah, sort of, kind of. If you're doing large work, if you will. When I'm talking about detail work, I'm talking about doing inlay for, an instrument. That's very small work. It may seem like it's big. When you see the overall inlay pattern, it looks kind of big sometimes, but it's not. It's very tiny. So to me, that little tiny hole is plenty big enough for me to see through, to see what I'm doing. Plus, the main advantage is when you get out on the edge of something, it doesn't tip and cause a screw up in the edge of your work. So that's why I didn't care for this base. But that's not the only reason. The other reason is that it's aluminum and it can scratch a little bit. It's a little harsh. So I made it out of the cutting board material. This is not Delrin, by the way. Someone that knows a lot about plastics told me what it is, and I don't remember exactly what he said. Polyurethane, polyethylene or something. It's a poly type, some kind of plastic. It's not the actual Delrin. Delrin, and I kind of knew that anyway because I know I've got Delrin in the shop for machining, and it machines quite different than this does. This is more like a waxy, slicky type stuff that kind of, when you try to cut it, it kind of pushes out of the way type of stuff, versus the Delrin pretty much machines straight up and down. So anyway, the point is that this kind of material, though, is perfect for sliding around on top of an instrument because it's pretty slick. It's not going to scratch. So I recommend that if you have the ability to get this type of plastic, which you could just buy a cutting board, literally, and cut it up and make your own bases and things like that. And you can see I've recessed the screws deeply so that they're not going to scratch the instrument. Okay, so that's the first thing, was the base. Now, you do see that I chopped out a larger area here to make it thinner so that I can see better. Like if that was that full thickness, that little hole wouldn't be big enough. But by the fact that I can see down in the little hole, for me, that's perfect. Now, you could argue that the hole could be a little bigger. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's up to you, personal preference. But for me, this beats the daylights out of this. I didn't like this at all. It needs to be sturdier than that when you're doing that kind of detail work. This base is a good base in the sense that it has the hose outlet here. And, you're going to need that if you're doing the kind of work that I was doing there on that inlay. And you can just put a hose on this and then run this to your air compressor. See, I have a regular air compressor connection here. Now, you don't need very much PSI. 5 or 6 pounds is 10 pounds, something like that is more than enough. In fact, probably the less is more, if you will. And anyway, that blows in there, and then there's a hole that is angled down to this area right here, and it keeps all the dust blown out, and that's very, very handy. And the reason I use such a very light hose is, should be fairly obvious, you don't want anything impeding your movement. So the lighter the hose is, the better also. You don't want to just hook a regular, big air hose to this. It would just be too bulky. So I got quite a bit of length here. Probably got about 10 feet of length on this to get it out of my way, and that allows it to work really well. Okay, now, then I added this on the back, this machine piece here, and I can, this can slide in here like so. Then this screw can tighten down. I don't know if I can do this here. Yeah, I can do that. And tighten that down. And then all these holes, and you can adjust it infinitely pretty much, but all these holes then, you put it like a pin. Like before you cut the hole out in your soundboard on a guitar, before you cut the hole out, you could have a tiny hole drilled right dead center. and then you have a pin in that hole. In fact, what I most often do, and I should have brought that over here too, is I'll have a larger piece of wood under the soundboard with a pin in that larger supportive board. Then I lay the soundboard on top of that with a pin going through that into the harder board. So that pin is very solid then in that hard board, down below the soundboard, if that makes sense. And anyway, then you take that pin and you can put it in one of these holes and you can infinitely adjust it and get exactly the right size, and you put the right kind of router bit in there, and then you can spin it around that and cut out a perfect rosette slot or a perfect binding slot, whatever you're putting in around the sound hole. So, purfling type thing. And so you can just spin it on that and it just works great. Now, you obviously have to know a little bit about using the router and setting the depth and all that kind of thing, but that's not the scope of this. The point is that's the way you can make a perfect, a perfect rosette with this thing. And, I made all of these parts myself. It's, you could even make this without a milling machine. I used a milling machine, of course, to do this, but you could make this by hand, really. The only critical part that's absolutely critical is getting these two holes, lined up with the threaded holes in the base. Now, this plastic allowed me to make threaded holes in this plastic. So these two screws here are threaded into the plastic. That's what holds this in place. And you can't tighten it super tight or you would, obviously screw up your threads in your plastic. So you just have to take all of that into account. But anyway, this thing here is really, when it comes to routing circles, this is the cat's meow in my opinion. It absolutely is perfect for that. Okay, and then again, I guess it goes without saying, but when you're doing that rosette, of course, you can, you make one pass and maybe that's not wide enough to put your purfling into. Maybe that pass is too thin, and it's better to be too thin than too wide, you understand. So you go thin first, and then you just adjust it the slightest amount and make another pass, and widen it out. So it's better to work from too tiny to larger than it is to start out large, and then you're messed up if you start out too big. So always start out much smaller than you need and work your way up into it. Sneak up on it, as I say. It's always way better. Okay, so that was the standard Dremel base and everything. Then my wonderful viewer, and again, I should have wrote his name on this. I thought I did it sometime, but I don't. Me in names, and it's no slight to him. He was wonderful to send this to me. I mean, absolutely. This thing changed my life. I love this base. This base is awesome. And this is a plunge base, is what it really is. And it's especially helpful when I'm cutting that slot in the bridge, when you're cutting your saddle slot. So you can, and this is a depth controller here. So, I'm not going to go into the whole process of how I set the depth and all that. I've shown it in my videos. But the point is that this changed everything on that. So like I could get my depth set, have the bit up, have the router spinning, then I could very controlled, I could drop this into the slot, see? And then my stop here would stop me at the proper depth. And then I could just tighten these up. It's still tedious. It's still tedious, because even just tightening this up will cause your movement. So you got to be very, very, very careful. I can't even tell you how careful. This is the one with the pucker factor, as I was telling you. So, so this is not really riding on the bridge, as you understand. It's riding on that white plastic that you saw me show in my jigs and fixtures on that video that I showed a few days ago, the jigs and fixtures video. So you can see the white plastic that this rides on. And then that white plastic is what guides you to cut the slot in the perfect place. But this really was a game changer in helping me do that more accurately. And that's not all. What's really cool is that it comes with a plug-in here for electric. And I can plug this in to my bench right here. and you can see that it has a light. And that light, again, is just wonderful. Just absolutely wonderful to have that light. So this thing, this really was awesome. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. Now, this is, you know, aluminum, and I didn't bother trying to make it better because I'm sliding on top of that white slick plastic. If I was going to use this on the top of the instrument, I would probably put the Teflon tape on it. You can buy tape that's like Teflon backed or whatever, and that would help it slide better without scratching. So I'd probably do that if I was going to actually use this on the top surface of the instrument. But this was actually riding on the white plastic, so I didn't have to do that. Okay, but I absolutely love that bass. That thing it's just killer. Now, you could argue that this one does the same thing. It's a plunge bass also, but not nearly as nice as that one. And this is way harder to operate. In fact, this one here almost takes a college education to operate because it's not intuitive. It really is not intuitive. It's almost backwards to what you would expect when you start up and down and with this type bass. So this one though is just flat, straightforward in your face, intuitive. There's no, there's no way you can screw up how to operate it, if you will. Where this one you definitely can. Let's see here. These are binding type cutters. Let me just show you. This was the old original binding cutter that I think came from Stu Mack. And trying to think, did I modify this in any way? I don't think I really modified this. I might have cut a little bit off of one side or something, but this is slightly offset. And one side of your cutter, now I showed those cutters yesterday, that spiral, that kind of, I don't want to use the word cone because cone is tapered. Cylinder base, that cylinder little cutter with the slanted slots. Anyway, you put that in the Dremel, it's sticking through here, and one side of it will barely be sticking out, the other side will be sticking out more. And sometimes you're doing a very narrow binding, and so you'll use this side, and other times you're doing a deeper binding and you use this side. But this doesn't really allow for any adjustment, so you have to have binding that fits this. So this old one, and I don't know that anybody has this anymore or uses this particular one, but that's just showing you how you could make a binding cutter. And the way you do this is you're going around the edge. In case you can't picture it, you have the end of your Dremel is mounted in here, and you tighten this screw down. So your cutter's down in there, and then you're holding your Dremel. Of course, I can't do this all loose like this. Everything would be secured, you know. And, well, actually, not necessarily. The way this one actually works is you can actually do it just like I'm holding it here. So you got it between your knees, and then you take you're holding your Dremel out here, and then you take this and you run it right along here like this. And you're holding onto the end of this. Now, your finger is pretty close to that cutter. And so you're holding it like this, and you're just routing this binding slot right out right here is what you're doing. So, and that is how I actually use it. I hold it between my knees like this and do it like this. And pull it, generally pulling it toward me so I can see what's going on. And that also depends on the rotation. You know, like if one way one way would be what you would call climb milling, and it will want to run on you. So you got to be careful with that. You can do climb milling, or cutting toward yourself is really the preferred way. But you can go the other way, but you got to understand that it's going to grab and want to really go fast that way. So that's important too. And JR just walked in.
I want a cameo. Can I have a cameo?
I guess. You never know what this is going to be.
Hello, everybody.
I'm in the middle of a lot of stuff here, buddy. So just...
Yeah, but this is... Your viewers are going to love this.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're going to love it.
All right. I wanted to give them a shout out to Brian's Patreon is what I wanted to do. Or Brian's GoFundMe.
All right.
So, I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't watch my channel, Homestead Horsemanship, but my last video, if you go to the channel and watch it, it's called Where's Oliver Going? And Big Announcement for Rhonda. And in that video, I have a GoFundMe account for a friend of mine that just passed away this past Sunday. He was in my graduating class, and his wife was in my graduating class. They were high school sweethearts. So they're my age, 40 years old, and he died unexpectedly on Sunday, leaving a first and third grade child as well as an adult child that they had back when they were first out of high school. But the first and third grader, there's still a lot of, raising to do. So the community around here has come together to help with the funeral expenses, but I got to thinking about all the other expenses. He had diabetes and multiple surgeries with diabetes, multiple heart surgeries for a heart attack, and then just all the cost of living and inflation. So I'm really trying to help that family out and try to get them completely debt-free is my goal. So go to Homestead Horsemanship on Facebook. You can find the GoFundMe, or go to that video and you can find links to that GoFundMe. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, Brian Dunham was a really nice fella. It's really, really sad, the whole story. And he helped us move down here when JR and him were already friends. He had met him down in this area because JR and Sue had kind of temporarily moved down here so JR could attend high school down here before we actually moved into the farm. And so when we did actually move, Brian was one of the key people that helped us move down here. So he was a good friend, and it's really, really a sad, sad story. If you have the ability to help, that would just be wonderful, because it's a depressed economy down here, and nobody has any money. I mean, that's just the bottom line truth of it, and I'm sure that they are struggling. There's no doubt about it. Well, anyway, moving back into what we're talking about here. Let's see. Now I'm a little lost on where I was headed. Well, let's just go ahead and finish covering these. Now, this is the more modern, updated version of this, and I did modify this one also, and I'll show you what I did. This one is more adjustable, so you can see how this goes in and out. There's the cutter. Again, the Dremel tool would be on here. The cutter would be sticking through right here. Between here and this brass, the cutter fits that space right in there. This is your roller that goes along the side of your instrument. So again, you're doing the same, almost exact same thing. I'll just hold it again and show you. You would be holding it like this and running it right along the side here and cutting this slot. What I modified on this one was that I put a longer handle on this. This came out almost exactly the same, but the handle was very, very short. So I put I lengthened the handle by almost twice, and that way you have something you can hold on to. So I had to make this piece, and you can see a screw on the end of it. Or maybe you can if it would focus, but it doesn't focus very good. But I put it, so this thing is hollow, and it's got a screw going through that runs through here. This brass piece pivots, this rolls. So that's what's actually rolling on your side here. But anyway, this is much preferred because you have the adjustment. So this one's more, I hesitate to say infinitely adjustable, but it kind of is. I mean, you can put it anywhere you want to for any depth of binding slot. So this is sold by StewMac also. Again, I modified it to suit myself. Now, I'll tell you another thing I modified. I put it in my milling machine and I cut off edges here. These pieces here stuck out a lot further around here. And that's not good either for, like, when you got to get up, up tight areas or in tight places. Well, those edges would stick out and hit something. And so I milled the edges off and blocked mine off shorter. So, and you could just take a file and file them off. I mean, it doesn't have to have a milling machine. But my point is that I modified that also just to make it more friendly. And here's another good example. Here's a good spot. Like right here, you hit that. Well, if this is sticking out another 1/4 inch, well, that's another 1/4 inch of binding slot that you have to cut by hand. By cutting all that off of there and, getting rid of most of that excess, then, I can get a 1/4 inch closer to what I'm, cutting the slot out. So those are just little minor modifications, and easy to make, even really with your own hand tools. This one might be a little harder with hand tools, but I have a lathe, of course, and so I was able to turn down that little knob and then thread it through there. Okay, so anyway, I modified that. This is another one that I'm trying to think of how I use this one. You know, like, again, you just have to use your imagination a little bit. Like, this would bolt up like so, and then this would be more for guitars, I think, really. And you'd slide it, like this would be riding on the top of the guitar, and then you would cut your slot like so. So that's just another example, but then you got to have it threaded into the base of the Dremel tool, like so. So your Dremel cutter would be cutting down through here, and then you would just run that along the edge. And again, it's kind of infinitely adjustable to get the depth that you want. But that's a really good attachment also. And I'm looking to see if I modified this one. I don't see any particular modifications on this. But I don't know where I got this, I'll be honest. I would think StewMac, but I'm not positive on that. And I don't know if this came with a... See, I've modified everything a lot, and sometimes I take things off of other things. So I don't know if this came on a base or something already. I just don't remember. But anyway, that's what it looks like, and it is pretty handy. It's pretty cool. Now, you don't have to go to this extreme. This is like the cat's meow type version of the binding cutter for like a guitar. You don't have to do that. There's easier ways, or I shouldn't say easier, but there's ways that you can do it without spending any money, because that's going to be costly. And without spending any money at all, you can do just as good a job. It just takes a little more effort on your end. And that is, and I've got these in all sizes and shapes. You can take this, see how it's made, and you can see this little part here. This part rides along the edge of the guitar, and you can just put this, you mount it on with two little tiny C-clamps like that, and you can see how you can, this is kind of infinitely adjustable again. You can move it in or out and cut any size slot you want. Like your bit is poking through, and your bit is poking through and almost touching this. So your bit is coming through here, of course, and sticking out, and then it's almost touching this wooden thing right here. And then that wooden thing rides along the side of the guitar and keeps your depth appropriate. So that's one of them. I've made a bunch of these. Like here's another one. This one's made out of that slick plastic again. And again, this rides along and does its thing. Here's a different size one, and I don't know why I made so many different ones. I honestly don't remember, but they all fit a particular purpose, And so you can make these pretty easily. And then again, it's all you need to cut a perfect binding slot. It'll work just perfect. So you just clamp it on like so, and then you run this around the top of your guitar, and it'll cut a perfect slot for you. And here's just yet one more. So, I made a bunch of them, over the years for different purposes. And it only take a couple of minutes to make one of these. It doesn't take very long at all. And especially if you got any kind of power tools at all. Okay, so most of this is about binding, cutting binding slots and things, because you do a lot of that when you're building instruments. Let's see, what else do I have here? This is just a kind of silly thing in a way, but on the other hand, it's handy for me occasionally. So you see here, this is the ferrule that goes on the end of a Dremel tool, and it's on there tight. I can't get it off. But anyway, this screws on, and you have your the internal ferrule, and you put your Dremel bit in this. Now, a lot of times I was using this with a drill bit, a tiny drill bit, but like I need to drill a hole that's way back in something, like maybe in the end of a truss rod cover, and I want to make the hole bigger. Well, I can put this in here, and I can spin this by hand and make the hole bigger, or put a flat cutter on the end and flatten a hole out on the bottom. Maybe I want to put a washer in there or something. But anyway, this is, just using Dremel technology with a long rod like this, and I can reach back in something. So it's just an idea that you could use to, use Dremel bits with, type of thing. And I don't know why that won't come off there. But of course, you have to cut the proper threads to screw this on. And maybe that's my problem. Maybe my threads aren't proper. But that sucker's on there tight. I would have thought I could have loosened that up. But anyway, that's what that is. It's just a long way to reach with a Dremel cutter or a drill bit and reach back into something. So, and that could even technically be down inside the sound hole or something. If you needed to do something in there, maybe there's something you need to cut away or trim down, you could use that. Let's see, what else? I think that pretty much covers the Dremel side of the house. Pretty much. Then there's, my wonderful viewer that made this for me, he also made this, and this, you can screw each one of these into right here, and then this becomes another type of circle cutter. You can use this to spin, again, pivot on this spot right here and cut a circle. And and again, it's infinite size. You can cut, well, it's probably limited by that on how small the circle could be. So, you can only go so small, but you can go pretty darn big with this. So this is, again, another method for cutting, circles with the Dremel. So that, again, that wonderful viewer made that also. Now, I used this once or twice, but I didn't use this very much because I had that other one, and I think this one's, more suited to the size, if is really what it boils down to. This is really suited to the perfect size for your rosettes and things like that. This is more for a little bit bigger projects, but it's really awesome. Then here's your Proxon stuff, and again, I probably highly modified this also. Now the Proxon, I'd say one of the negatives of the Proxon base is it doesn't have ability to hook your air hose into it very easily. Both of those bases have the ability to hook an air hose into it. No, I take it back. This one does not. But I made this little deal, a little thing here, that would also allow me to attach it to that base. And what this is like, you can, I'm not going to explain this yet, but like if I wanted to put air into this, I could, well, there's two holes right here. I could screw this down into those two holes. And then if you see here, I've got a hole cut through at an angle, like that, and that angle points right at the center of this, and I can then slide this hose. It's just too much to hold here. It's just too much to hold. But I can slide this down in here, see, like this, attach this on here, and now I have the ability to get air down where I'm cutting. See, so that was a little adaptation or a thing I made for my Proxon base, and that really is awesome. I mean, like, air is really nice when you're especially if you're, if you're routing out a really detailed precision hole, even if you're just making round dot holes or diamonds or something, anything, the sawdust will build up so fast. The air is just absolutely wonderful when you're trying to route precision. So anyway, that's how you can make an adapter if you don't have a way to get air on your base. You just make yourself a little adapter, drill a hole at an angle like that, and have it pointed right down, tighten it down, and it works great. Absolutely works great. Okay, this is yet another binding deal that I made for using this for cutting binding. Now, because this is an aluminum base, I put the Teflon tape on here. Now, I got to be honest, the Teflon tape's a little bit ragged now. It needs to be replaced. But if I'm sliding this on top of a guitar, that Teflon tape is, number one, it's slicker, and number two, it won't scratch like the aluminum could. And again, this is sort of infinitely adjustable. Again, you can see the same technology. Your bit comes down, almost touches this aluminum, but the aluminum is riding on the edge of the guitar as you're going around cutting the binding, see? And again, you can adjust it almost infinitely with these two screws right here and pull it in and out and slide it in and out. Again, the screws are tight. I can't do it right now. But I made this piece and, just made it where it works, and it works great. I mean, it's really rigid. It's really solid. The advantage of this base with this attachment is that I don't have to use little C clamps to hold it like I would with these little bases that I made. This one is attached really, really strongly and really purposefully, and really works well. So this Proxxon base is really good if you add this little adapter on there for cutting binding and things. And I don't know if you can see it really well how it all works, but there's these two pins that go right through the base. They're made, this base is made to accept pins that go right through it. And so I just used their technology there and made my own little attachment using those pins and slide, so you can slide this in and out on those two pins that go through the base. I don't know how well this is all showing up and how well this is coming across. I hope it works for you. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I mean, a lot of these things are complicated. They're not just little simple things to do. So it's kind of hard to explain things that are really complicated in an easy, simple way to understand. I hope they're making sense to you. I think that kind of covers everything I was really wanting to cover. This is kind of goofy, but you know how I told you how you have a pin and you pivot on, like with this right here, and this is a perfect example. Well, I needed a mobile pin, if you will, for like when I was routing out that channel for the armrest on some of those guitars I made where I put a built-in armrest into it, or where I rounded off the corner and the corner became the armrest. Well, this was an armrest pivot. So, and it's got these really kind of a non-skid plastic here, a rubber that won't skid on the top of the guitar. So I could lay this down, I'd have a pin in here, I'd put the appropriate hole pin here, and then I could go around and cut the armrest slot with this. Just little things. I mean, you just have to think outside the box. How in the heck can I control that? What's the way I can make that accurate rather than just doing it total freehand? Freehand sometimes is fine, but when you're trying to do something that precise, freehand usually won't get it. You'll have too many waves in it and stuff, and you want something to be perfectly smooth, And so that's how I did that. And I might have added a clamp on this too, some sort of a clamp, I don't remember, or set a weight on it or something. I don't know how I did it. You probably see it in the video. But anyway, that's what that is. Let's see. I think that does cover everything. If you're getting critical here, I'm trying to think of what I used this for, but I think I used it on, I don't remember now, but sometimes you need, like maybe I needed this to be further away from the cutter. Well, here's a spacer I made that goes in between this top piece and the bottom piece. So I made a spacer there. So, I mean, there's things you can do. Like if you make this and then you go, well, that's still, it's too, it's not sticking down far enough. Well, then you can just put a spacer in there. You know what I'm saying? There's all kinds of modifications you can make to these things. It just takes thinking about it and going, well, if that was down deeper, it would be really easy. I'll put a spacer in there, and that kind of thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe at least it gave you some ideas of ways to think outside the box when you run into a problem on working on binding and things like that with the Dremel tool. I would say binding is the 80% of what I use my Dremel tool for, was binding. And the rest of it was probably just handheld sanding and cutting and different things like that. But for me, the Dremel tool really shines on the binding. And by the way, I was going to tell you about the size differences. Now they may have, this was several years ago that I got the Proxon. And I don't know, they may have a big brother of this now, but at the time this was their go-to. And it's a 0.9 amp. I don't know what this one is offhand, but I bet it's bigger than that. This is a 1.6 amp. And so that's huge difference. I mean, it's really huge difference. It's almost twice the power with this that you have with this. When you're buying a power tool, I've said this before, and a lot of people still argue with me, but I'm telling you, it's been proven to me since I was a child. My dad told me this when I was a child. He said, when you're buying a power tool, you always look at the amperage. And the amperage is really what rules when it comes to a power tool. And he's right. So this is 1.6 amps. This is only like 0.9 amps. So it's a huge difference in power. This thing here just rules. I mean, you don't have any problem with this at all. This is a Dremel 4000. Now they make them a lot smaller than this, and they even make them bigger than this. I find this one to just be like perfect for musical instrument work. It's not too big, and it's got all the power you would ever need. And what I really like, for me, again, because now I know if you like to use the flexible shaft, that's perfectly fine, and that's perfectly okay. You can make all the same adapters and things for your flexible shaft that I have for this Dremel. But for me, I like this. Now, of course, you got your cord, but I don't feel the cord all that much. With the flexible shaft, to me, it's very stiff. And I don't like that stiffness feel when I'm trying to do detailed work. But anyway, that's just me. For me, this is just like using a pencil. It's not really very difficult for me at all. For some people, this might be a little large for your hands. The problem with this is I can't hold this. I mean, it's slicker than snot on a doorknob. I'm seriously telling you, your hands will just slide right off this thing. It's slick. It's absolutely slick. It's metal and it's slick. I mean, quality-wise, it's excellent quality. I'm not knocking the quality. I'm talking about the practicality of using it. Yeah, if you put on rubber gloves, you'd probably be okay. But I don't like gloves anyway. So this is awkward to use in my opinion. It's excellent to be used with that base. It's excellent tool. There's nothing wrong with the tool and all that. It's high quality. I'm just telling you what the differences are and the myths that are out there. The myths are this thing just runs circles around a Dremel, and that's just not true at all. Not true at all. Just depends on the Dremel. Now, you can buy a little tiny Dremel, and sure, this would outdo it no problem. Okay, there you go. Just wanted to clear the air there. But I do think, I just want, for the record, I do think the Proxon's a quality tool. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I'm not saying it's junk or anything. It's really a good tool. Just that for my purposes, this is a better tool. All right, I'm done. I beat that to death. I don't think there's any life left in it. Would you not know? I can't believe it. Rod Wentler's first. I saw some bickering down through there about, and I think Rod was rubbing it in. He says, so I saw something where he said, I saved you a spot, Dottie. I'm just keeping it warm for you. That's funny. It's nice that we all have a little community here and we can talk and have fun. And if I don't make too many of you mad every day, it might survive. We have 169 viewers at the moment. But you know me, I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the way I see it. And whether I see it right or not, and it's just the way I see it. That's all I'm telling you. Just so you understand. I realize I'm not the be-all, end-all, last word on everything. I get that. But on the other hand, I'm not going to tell you something that I don't agree with either. So, I'm not going to just say it because it's the popular thing to say. All right, moving on down. I'm looking for question marks primarily. I see Wayne Blitz. I don't recall seeing that name. Probably have. There's Norman Wittenbach. I don't remember seeing that name. But I probably have again. I don't remember everything. Norman says, yes, chirp. Now I'm hooked on Itchy Boots. Yeah, Itchy Boots, isn't that cool? And I saw somebody else made a comment about Itchy Boots also, and it's down further. I think it's Donald Matthews. Yeah, isn't it crazy? You'd have to hold a gun to my head to get me to do what that girl does voluntarily. Oh my gosh. It's just nuts. I mean, the latest thing is the motorcycle, Alaska is what she calls her motorcycle, Alaska. Alaska fell out of the canoe upside down in the river. And then in the middle of the night, out there with a flashlight, these guys, and are they good mechanics? I guess so, because they did it. They took the whole motorcycle completely apart, cleaned it out, put it back together, and got it to start, out there. And it's just the middle of nowhere with a flashlight. Oh my gosh, I would be a nervous wreck. I'd how that girl holds it together, I have no idea. And to me, it doesn't look like the safest place in the world, but on the other hand, everybody seems to be super friendly and super helpful, and I guess it's fine. But boy, it don't look like it. You don't have that impression from our, from our American views and aspect. You don't get that impression. But man, it's just absolutely nuts. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to be watching Itchy Boots. It's just amazing. This girl travels on her own, and a lot of people have said, oh, she's got a camera crew with her. No, she doesn't have a camera crew with her. She does it all by herself. Nobody goes with her, and she has this drone, and she's able to operate the dang drone and get the most cinematic shots in the world while she's riding her motorcycle. She can operate the drone. It's just amazing. I can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, so I don't know how she does all what she does. And every road that she rides on, I mean, when you think it can't get no worse, it somehow finds a way to get worse. Oh, those roads are horrible. The very worst trail on my farm is 10 times better than the average road she's riding on. Unbelievable. Just flat unbelievable. Blair Turner, you gave some advice to patch a hole in the side of an 1850 Parley guitar. It worked great. I am writing on the inside of the patch. Thanks. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad it worked for you. Yeah, there's, I would say, two main ways I do it. One is that you square off the hole, number one. You almost always want to square it off. You can make a patch that fits an odd shape. But if you can, and sometimes that's what you want to do. So let me just back up and say that sometimes that's the best thing to do, is make it fit the weird shape hole. But if it's not far from being straight, rectangular, square, even if it's trapezoid or triangular, it doesn't matter. As long, the point is that you can make a patch that fits whatever it is. If you can fit the odd shape, then fine, stay with the odd shape. But if you're having trouble trying to match the odd shape, well then subtly square off the hole and get it straight-sided and all that. And then I was saying the two techniques, one of them, and probably the easiest technique, is you bevel off the sides of the hole then. After you get the hole the shape you want it, then bevel your sides off. And what that does is that lengthens the thickness of your side, is really what it does. Because when you bevel it, now it's longer from the inside edge to the top edge. It makes that angle longer, so you got more to work with. Then you make your patch and you bevel the opposite way on your patch. Then your patch won't fall through the hole because your patch is actually bigger than the hole. Then and then you can clamp that into place or whatever, and you can use CA glue, or you can, if you're not in a hurry, and which is better if you're not, I would use Titebond original, and it'll be perfect. Well, you could even use Titebond 3 on this, because this is something you don't ever want to come apart again. So Titebond 3 would be perfect for gluing in your patch. Generally speaking, when I glue a patch in like that too, I also want to leave it slightly proud, of the surface. That way I can, sand it down or scrape it down and get it just perfect to blend in. And then that's the one method, and that's probably the easiest method. The other method is a little more complicated, but sometimes it's got the better application, and that is if your sides are thick enough, you might route around the hole, like a square rectangle around the hole, and you route halfway through the thickness of the side. And then you make your patch to fit that route out spot, and it just lays down on top of it, so it covers the hole. Now, if you're really good at it, you'll make your patch a little thicker, and you'll actually route the inside also, so that the patch will go through the hole and match the inside of the guitar also. So there's a gazillion ways to do it. No one perfect only way to do it. But anyway, glad you brought that up again. I think people need to hear those ways to fix those kinds of things, because it's not all that terribly hard. It just takes a little time, a little patience. Just, again, sneak up on it. I would say anything you do on a guitar, sneak up on it. Just little bites. Be patient, little bites. Don't try to knock it all down with 1 or 2 strokes of your file, that kind of thing. Little bites, and you'll be fine. Okay. I'm hearing something outside. I don't know if that's wind or rain or what's going on. It looks like the sun's shining, so I doubt it's rain. Must be wind. Moving on down. I didn't want to miss anybody here. Paul Lanier says, only 1 out of 1,000 can catch the small music errors, but that person may never confront a musician about the flaw like me. Oh, I think this must have scrolled. God, it did. It scrolled a long ways. I'm sorry. I don't know where I'm at now. I seriously don't know where I'm at. I don't know. We were... wow. Yeah, all right, I found it. Whew, it scrolled way past where we went live. Blair Turner, you gave, all right, that was about that patch. Moving on down. Any more questions before we went live? I see some more question marks down there. Carolyn Fike, Jerry, don't you think the large number of early check-ins is a sign of how popular you are with us? Man, we love you and your content. Well, thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that very much. I just hope that people are getting something out of it. I don't do this as an ego trip or anything. I've always said from day one that I've always, want to try to help people figure out how to do this stuff and do it in a common sense way. That's the hype. Is the problem with it, everything is the hype. It's just like I was telling about the banjos yesterday. They're so dead. If you had to pick one instrument that has so much hype attached to it, you'd think it'd be the violin, but it's not. It's the banjo. There is so many theories and hype about the banjo out there, and 99.9% of them are just baloney. They're just bunk. Just treat your banjo exactly like you treat your guitar in terms of your intonation and setup and all that. And that's really the main thing of a banjo is intonation and setup. Just treat it the same way, and it's exactly the same. There's not one bit of difference. I don't care what all the hype says. It's absolutely wrong. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Carolyn, for that wonderful comment. Again, common sense is where it's at. You just stop and think about it, and if it don't make sense, then it probably ain't right. Dottie Hildebrand, I agree, Carolyn. You never know what... No, oh, well, thank you. Dottie's being complimentary there too. Thank you. Charles Berquist, please show your mandolin while singing in songs. It's hard to fit it in here. I try to do that, but if I get up high enough where you can see the mandolin, then my head's cut off, and it's just difficult. I try to do that, but it's really hard to do. RC. I mean, if I was back further, it'd be no problem. But then again, then the sound suffers. So, it's just 6 and 1, half dozen the other, RC, can't pronounce that last name, TJOMSLAND. I don't recall seeing you here before, but glad you're here today. Good morning from Alaska. Try to download your Nashville system yesterday. Didn't work. Don't know how to restart it. I've sent an email. Okay, RC, I'll go in and look on the email after we're done here, and I'll send you a new link or whatever. And generally, when I send the new link, people get it to work. The only caveat I'm going to say to that is The only other time I've seen it fail is if you don't have enough space or something like, or if you have extremely slow internet, it's going to take a lot longer because it's a fairly big file. Clyde Price, good morning, Jerry and viewers. Have a great day, everyone. Okay, and let's see. Here we go. Marmerg, again, I don't recall seeing that name, I don't think. Did you ever learn Things in Life by Don Stover? Not yet. In fact, I didn't get a chance to work on any of those songs the other night at the restaurant. I was going to warm them up before I went, and I didn't have time. I was so involved in all the problems I was running into in the office. So I'll have to get into that later. I just haven't had time yet. What a great tune, such encouraging lyrics. I hope you realize what you mean to many of us. Well, thank you very much, Marmerge. R.C. Tom, again, Tomslin, I'm just going to say, since we still use tin cans and string to humidicate up here in Alaska, hopefully we can restart the download. Yeah, I'll send you a new link, and you'll be fine, I'm sure. It'll be sometime yet this morning. I'll send it to you. The Freeze. Was that cartridge 7.62? I think it was. I think that's what it is. It's tiny writing, number one, and it's full of dirt. It's hard to read it, but anyway, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, 7.62. 7.65 is an Argentine Mauser round. I think it's a 7.62. I've heard of that number before, and I think that's what that is. Moving on down, I'm looking again mostly for question marks. Yeah, if you have a oops, just smile and keep going. That's what, and I also tell my students, if you make a mistake while you're playing, smile, just keep going and play louder. That's why I play so loud. People think, well, he surely wouldn't play that loud if he didn't know what he was doing. It's a psychology thing, see? Paul Lanier, only 1 out of 1,000 can catch small music errors. Yeah, that's the one I was reading. But that person may never confront a musician about the flaw. Like me and the folks perform with, we just laugh at each other. Yeah, and it's mostly, where I'm at, it's just to have fun. I'm not trying to impress anybody. Like I said, by comparison, my friends down there in Springfield, the Chapmans, oh man, I'm this much on their music ability. I mean, like, their music ability's like this, and I'm like this. It's just an amazing difference. But it's okay. I mean, I can still hang with them. I just can't do what they can do. I can still more or less play what they play. I just can't do it as well as they do it. That's really the bottom line. Down to the bottom here. Let's see. Keep going. Okay, it looks like Simon Jardine. Again, if I'm missing people, I'm sorry. I'm looking for question marks primarily. My son left a fairly decent metal detector behind when he left to start his own journey. I've never looked at it. Can you set the depth it searches at? Well, not so much the depth, but your depth can be affected by a number of things, by some of the adjustments you make. Like you can do discrimination, like you can try to weed out like iron targets, like nails and rusty metal. And, I do for the most part. Now, even though I weed out most of it, sometimes big things like this will still give you a false signal. They'll signal more like they're a better type metal because they're so large. But you can weed out a lot of stuff, and that will affect your depth. If you don't weed out anything, it's going to go deeper, and you'll find more stuff, but you're going to be digging a lot of trash. And here, I'm seriously telling you, you just would not believe how much trash is in the ground. It's unbelievable. I mean, honestly, there's hardly any place. Now, if you get out in the really remote areas, no problem. But any place near where the old houses were, or any place out here in the close field area, close to the buildings here, anywhere you put it down, you hit stuff. I mean, and you can't even move it. You can't move it that far without hitting something. It'll go beep, 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 beep. It'll drive you nuts. So you have to kind of, discriminate and knock out a lot of that junk, and that way you're looking for the better, more brassy type targets. That's why I find things like this stuff, Now, again, those bigger iron targets, they'll still sometimes ring out. Sometimes they don't. So it's not so much the depth as it is the discrimination more than anything. And the more you discriminate, then probably the less depth is probably to some degree, although it'll still pick up a coin down pretty deep. It really depends a lot on your particular metal detector too. They're not all created equal. The one I have is a pretty darn good one. They make them better. Mine's a Equinox 800, a Mine Labs Equinox 800. It's a pretty top-of-the-line type metal detector, though it's on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably in the 8 range. If you're talking about the very best detector being a 10, it's probably an 8 or 8.5, somewhere in there, and your best detector would be a 10, but then you're going to spend exponentially more money to get to that 10. Sue Rosa just said, the dog is in the house. Okay. Our back door sometimes doesn't like to close perfectly, and when I don't close it perfectly, the dogs come in. We don't allow them in the house, partly because these are farm dogs. They're outside. They get loaded with ticks and chiggers and things. In fact, I just pulled a tick off of Sadie, even though we got her during the winter, and yet I pulled a tick off of her yesterday. It's crazy. The ticks around here are terrible. They're horrible. Moving on down, looking for question marks. Cup of Cool says, the way you pucker up cutting saddle grooves gives a whole new meaning to the pucker up buttercup. Yeah, that's for sure. That's funny. Yeah, it's that one will. I mean, because you've done so much work. See, that's the thing that maybe you might not be understanding is that. First of all, I usually make my own bridges. I don't usually buy a bridge, and yes, you can buy replacement bridges, but very, very often they won't cover the area entirely, or they're not exactly the same shape as the prior bridge. So I generally make my own bridges. So you've gone to all that work. You've cut the holes in it and all that, and you've sanded it and got it smooth and ready to glue on. Now you've located where it needs to go. You've glued it on. You've spent all this time doing a good setup on the instrument, all that, and you got the bridge glued on there. Now you don't have the slot in there yet, so now you're going to cut that slot. Well, you can ruin everything you've done up to that point if you cut that slot wrong. So it's the time to really take your time. That is the pucker factor to the nth degree. Cup of Cool, could you use your laser cutter to cut out the saddle grooves? Yeah, you could. I mean, under ideal conditions and you'd have to have the right kind of laser cutter and all that. The problems, first of all, the way I do it, it's already mounted to the guitar. So you'd have to have a giant laser cutter, which I don't. Mine's 8x10 at the biggest. Yeah, I could cut it before I put it on the guitar, but there's no real super big benefit to that because I can cut it without really worrying too much about it if it's not on the guitar. I mean, if I screw it up, I just get a different one. But so you could do it. But then the other really big factor with trying to cut the saddle slot in ebony or a black wood is that it doesn't cut very good in black wood. It has to be more of a white wood or something like that. The laser won't cut nearly as well in dark wood. And now, if you had the strong enough laser, but then again, then you got the problem, can you control the depth perfectly? So there's just as many problems with the laser as there would be just doing it by hand. In fact, there's probably more, actually. When you get right down to it, you'd have just as many problems. Now, for inlay, it's by far superior, But for the single slot like that, I don't even think it's maybe not even as good, really. Donnie Hildebrand, the drone shots have a mode that follow. Yeah, that's true. And she does set it up that way. It will follow her motorcycle. And my drone will do that too, but I haven't messed with that too much. And Carabella RV gave me a super chat. Thank you very kindly. And he says, thanks for the title of the photograph. He had sent me an email, and I based on the words he said, I said, I think you're talking about the song, The Photograph. And so I sent him some information about that song. So thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it very much. Moving on down, more question marks. It looks like Bad Bob Jerry, if you don't mind me asking, what is your age? I will be 70 years old on November 28th, 2024. Lynette Landry. And there, no question marks. Okay, here we go. Backstory family history. Could you or the band sometime, maybe, If I Needed You, Towns Van Zandt, Emmylou Harris and Don Williams did a great cover, If I Needed You. Oh, I've heard that song by Don Williams. If I needed you. I'll write it down. Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Gary doesn't already do that one. I would almost, either him or possibly Bill, but I would almost bet Gary does that one already. Just as, I can't recall him doing it. I don't remember. I'll look, we'll see. The Freeze, Jerry, those hole saws will cut through steel. I do it all the time. Number one, buy a Milwaukee, keep it flooded with WD-40. Well, I got news for you. It might work for you, but it ain't never worked for me. And I have tried multiple brands, and I've, keep oil and stuff. I can't even cut through sheet metal with it. Sue made just a sheet metal ring to go around a fire thing, and I said, well, I probably can cut through that with these hole saws. I couldn't do it at all. I tried and I tried and I tried. And I bought some new hole saws, bought one with carbide teeth, tried. I couldn't get it done. So it don't work for me. But since I told people about that, I watched some more videos and watching these guys do it. And they're not cutting through sheet metal. They're cutting through steel 3/8 of an inch thick. It's magic. It's absolute magic. I do not know how they do it, but it don't work for me at all. At all. Not even that much. So I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. And yeah, I know everybody had a comment about that and why it didn't work. But I've pretty much tried everything you can imagine. If you can imagine it, I've tried it and I can't get it to work. It just don't work for me. And that's just the name of that tune. It's just like I said with epoxy. I know 99.9% of the people in the world can use epoxy and just have great results, and it'll work every time for them. Like JB Weld, I see people using JB Weld for the most crazy things, and I can't get it to do anything. Zero, nothing. I mean, and I know how to mix epoxy. I mean, I'm not saying it won't fill the hole and all that, but for me, it doesn't last. To me, there's a difference between doing something and does it work. I can do the epoxy and I can put it in there and I can make the joint and all that, but did it work? In other words, did it last? Will it hold? Is it long term? And the answer to all those questions is no, it's not. And so that's why I say don't ever use epoxy on an acoustical instrument, except the exception. My one caveat is if you're just filling a void, a hole, and it's not a strength thing, then fine, use epoxy, it's fine. But if you're talking strength, do not use epoxy on an acoustic guitar. That's just me. You can choose to do different if you want to, but you'll find out what happens later. And then the problem is, then if it breaks after you've used epoxy, now try to fix it. Try to clean it up and fix it. It's a lot more work. So don't use epoxy and stuff. If you can get hole saws to cut through metal, you're just better at it than I am. That's all I can tell you. It don't work for me. I seriously look at those people on YouTube, and I see it's not just one person doing this. I see just tons of people doing it. And it's just total magic to me. That's like, you got to be kidding me. I can't even get it to cut through sheet metal. And that's the truth. Well, anyway, I'm going to let that go. And yeah, I know about annular cutters because that was the other thing. Everybody had to educate me on annular cutters. I do actually have a big magnet drill with annular cutters. And yeah, if that's what I need to do, that's what I'll use. But my point is, I see people doing it with just lightweight stuff, and it don't work for me. Okay, I'm done. Probably made some more people mad. 173 viewers at the moment, so thank you very kindly. We really do appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow with something else.